Ugh, get that janitor boy away from my vault. He's too stupid to understand a doorknob. Rafael Walcott's voice detonated through the marble corridor like a gunshot. The words ricocheted off glass walls and chrome fixtures, ensuring every executive on the 28th floor heard them perfectly. Kevin Ward's hand froze inches from the vault door. His blue Mosler maintenance jumpsuit, 2 sizes too large, borrowed from the supply closet, suddenly felt like a prison uniform. Behind him, his mother's cleaning cart tipped sideways. Disinfectant spray bottles exploded across the floor. The industrial mop clattered against polished marble. The chemical smell of ammonia mixed with Sarah Ward's sharp intake of breath. "Mr. Walcott, I'm so sorry." Sarah dropped to her knees, frantically gathering scattered supplies. Her gray uniform darkened at the knees from spilled cleaning solution. He was just what, Sarah? Raphael's Italian leather shoes clicked closer. His custom suit probably cost more than Sarah earned in 6 months. Teaching him to break into places he doesn't belong? Is that the family business? 3 executives in the corridor stopped mid-conversation. Their laughter came nervous and forced, the sound of people who knew they should intervene, but valued their stock options more than their conscience. Kevin remained perfectly still, not because of fear, because at that exact moment, he heard it. Tick, pause, tick, tick, pause. The vault's heartbeat. Walcott Industries headquarters represented the bleeding edge of financial technology. Server farms hummed behind climate-controlled glass. Holographic displays projected real-time market data across every wall. The building's AI system regulated temperature, humidity, and air pressure to the decimal point. Somewhere on the floor above, quantum computers processed billions of calculations per second. But the Mosler Vault, the titanium beast that dominated the security corridor, had become a $500 million tomb. 6 weeks ago, a freak lightning storm had struck the building's primary transformer. The electrical surge lasted 0.3 seconds, long enough to fry backup systems, long enough to trap the vault between eras. Its digital brain fried, its mechanical heart stuttering in confused trauma. Inside that vault sat something worth more than money. Prototype nanochips representing 8 years of research. Technology that would revolutionize data storage, quantum computing, and neural interfaces. Patents that would make Walcott Industries the most valuable company on Earth, if they could access it. MIT engineers had failed. NSA cryptographers had failed. The Swiss manufacturer sent their lead architect. He'd stared at diagnostic readouts for 3 days before admitting defeat. But Kevin heard what they couldn't. Tick, pause, tick, tick. "Are you even listening to me, boy?" Raphael grabbed Kevin's shoulder, spinning him around. "I said get away from—" "It's trying to communicate," Kevin whispered. The corridor fell silent. Even the building's ambient hum seemed to pause. Raphael's face cycled through confusion, then fury. "What did you just—" "The vault!" Kevin's eyes stayed locked on the brushed titanium surface. It reverted to legacy protocol. The lightning storm didn't break it. It sent it back. Way back! This child. Raphael turned to his executives, voice dripping venom. This child thinks he understands Swiss engineering that stumped MIT? Sir, maybe we should... One executive stepped forward. Should... What? Take advice from a teenager who can barely read. Raphael's cruelty had momentum now, feeding on itself. His kind show up here with mops and think they deserve to breathe the same air as innovators. Sarah's hands trembled as she shoved supplies back into her cart. Tears cut tracks down her cheeks, but she stayed silent. Speaking up meant losing this job. Losing this job meant losing their apartment. Losing their apartment meant Kevin's future died in a shelter. The math was that simple. That brutal. Kevin's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Let Raphael perform his cruelty. Let the executives laugh. Let the security cameras record everything, because Kevin had already solved it. He knew the vault wasn't locked. He understood why every expert had failed. He'd mapped the psychological combinations in his head while they'd fumbled with laser measurements and electromagnetic readings. His grandfather Caleb Ward, a safe-right who died when Kevin was 8, had taught him the truth. Machines don't just break. They retreat. They remember. They grieve. And this vault was grieving. "Come on, Kevin," Sarah's voice cracked as she grabbed his arm. "We need to finish the 3rd floor before—" "Mom." Kevin's whisper stopped her cold. He turned slowly, meeting her terrified eyes. In the fluorescent glare of the security corridor, with executives watching and Rafael's contempt hanging in the air like smoke, Kevin Ward spoke the words that would change everything. "Mom, it's not locked. It's scared." The vault's heartbeat skipped. Tick, tick, tick. And somewhere in the building's AI system, a security recording captured the exact moment a teenage janitor's son heard what $500 million in engineering expertise had missed. Rafael Walcott would remember this moment. He would remember it while signing documents he never imagined signing. He would remember it while watching his empire dissolve. He would remember it every single day for the rest of his life. But right now, in this frozen corridor, he just laughed. What happens when the world's smartest people all fail at the same problem? Chapter 2 reveals the billion-dollar crisis that proves Kevin right and makes Raphael's mockery even more devastating. Keep reading. Rafael Walcott's laughter still echoed in the marble corridor as Sarah dragged Kevin toward the service elevator. But 3 floors up, in the executive boardroom, that laughter would die within the hour. The panic had started small. A missed deadline. A concerned email from the board. But panic, like compound interest, multiplies exponentially. By Monday morning, Walcott Industries was hemorrhaging money at a rate that made veteran CFOs physically ill. Dr. Patricia Chen from MIT arrived first. She had 3 PhDs and had cracked vault systems for the Pentagon. She lasted 4 days before admitting defeat, her laser mapping equipment packed away in silence. "The encryption is responding to phantom commands," she'd reported. "Like it's receiving signals from the past." The NSA sent Agent Marcus Webb, a cryptographer who'd broken into terrorist networks and foreign government databases. He brought equipment that required its own power generator, spent 72 hours analyzing electromagnetic signatures. Left without a word, his security clearance preventing him from explaining why the vault terrified him. The Swiss manufacturer dispatched Heinrich Müller, the vault's original architect. The man who'd engineered the locking mechanism had flown business class from Zurich with blueprints and diagnostic tools worth more than a small house. He'd taken one look at the vault's behavior and said something in German that didn't need translation. Then he'd booked a return flight. By week 6, Raphael's billion-dollar empire was circling the drain. 48 hours. CFO David Morrison's voice cracked during the emergency board meeting. His hands shook as he projected financial models onto the glass wall. "If we can't access those nanochips in 48 hours, our creditors will force liquidation." Raphael sat at the head of the table, his custom suit unable to hide the weight he'd lost. The man who'd humiliated Kevin Ward in a corridor now looked like a ghost wearing expensive fabric. "The chips aren't just valuable," Morrison continued. "They're our collateral. Every loan, every investor promise, every stock valuation, it all hinges on those prototypes. Without them." He didn't finish. He didn't need to. "What about the Chinese team?" someone asked. "Declined. They said the vault is—" Morrison checked his notes. "Possessed by mechanical ghosts." Nervous laughter died quickly. Sarah Ward heard everything. She'd learned years ago that janitors become invisible after 10 p.m. Executives held their most honest conversations while she emptied trash bins and wiped down conference tables. They discussed affairs, illegal trades, and company secrets as if her gray uniform rendered her deaf. Tonight she listened to grown men with Ivy League degrees admit they had no solutions. "We're talking Chapter 11, one executive whispered. "Maybe Chapter 7. Sarah's hands never stopped moving. Polish the table, straighten the chairs, pretend you don't hear your employers planning their own funeral. 3 floors down, Kevin sat cross-legged in a break room, his worn notebook spread across a plastic table. He'd been sketching for hours. Not the vault itself. He couldn't get close enough for that anymore. Security had been doubled after his incident with Rafael, but he didn't need proximity. He had something better: perfect mechanical memory. His pencil moved in precise strokes, recreating the vault's internal geometry from sound alone. The tick patterns, the thermal signatures he'd felt radiating through titanium, the microscopic vibrations that spoke of gear teeth and spring tension and alignment protocols. It was the same gift that had made his grandfather legendary. Caleb Ward had died when Kevin was 8, but the old man's lessons remained carved into Kevin's mind like code in silicon. Caleb had been a safe-right, not the glorified locksmiths who changed house locks, but a true master. The kind of craftsman corporations and governments called when everything else failed. "Safes don't just lock, boy," Caleb had told him during their last summer together. His weathered hands had guided Kevin's small fingers across an old combination lock. "They think. They remembered their makers. They carried trauma." Kevin had thought it was poetry then. Now he understood it was engineering. The nanochips inside Walcott's vault represented something beyond their $500 million valuation. They were neural interface prototypes, technology that could bridge human consciousness and quantum computing. First-generation chips that would make their creators trillionaires. But only if someone could reach them. Kevin's pencil paused over a sketch of the vault's internal mainspring assembly. According to his calculations, the lightning storm had triggered a catastrophic cascade failure. The vault's quantum processors had fried instantly, but the mechanical failsafe, a backup system designed in 1970, had activated. Except the failsafe wasn't designed for a vault this complex. It was like forcing a supercomputer to run on punch cards. The system was alive but trapped between 2 incompatible realities. Every expert had tried to communicate with the quantum system. No one had thought to speak mechanical. Kevin's mother appeared in the doorway, her cleaning cart squeaking softly. "Baby, it's 2 a.m. We should..." Click. Kevin's head snapped up. Not the normal tick-tick pause he'd been hearing for weeks. This was different. Irregular. Asymmetrical. Click, pause, click. Click, pause. Pause. Click. "Did you hear that?" Kevin whispered. Sarah glanced toward the distant security corridor. "Hear what?" But Kevin was already standing, his notebook forgotten on the table. His grandfather's voice echoed across the years. When a safe changes its rhythm, it's trying to tell you something. The vault wasn't just scared anymore. It was counting down. The countdown click haunted Kevin for 3 days. He carried it with him through his mother's cleaning shifts, through the empty break rooms and fluorescent-lit corridors. While Sarah scrubbed executive bathrooms, Kevin sat in the employee cafeteria at 3 a.m., a paper napkin spread before him like a canvas. His pencil moved in tight circles, gears within gears, cycles within cycles. The vault's rhythm had changed. That irregular clicking wasn't random. It was a pattern. A mechanical Morse code that spoke of springs under tension and cylinders rotating through predetermined sequences. Kevin sketched the gear ratios he'd calculated in his head, marking the probable tooth counts and pitch diameters. Click, pause, click, click. He could still hear it. Not with his ears, with something deeper. The same instinct that had let his grandfather sense a tumbler's position by feeling vibrations through a stethoscope. "Trying to reinvent the wheel, kid." Rafael Walcott's voice sliced through Kevin's concentration like a blade. The CEO stood in the cafeteria doorway, flanked by 3 executives who'd clearly been pulled from a late-night crisis meeting. Their ties were loosened. Their faces carried the exhausted desperation of men watching their fortunes evaporate. But Raphael's cruelty still had fuel. He crossed to Kevin's table in 4 deliberate strides, his Italian shoes clicking against tile, snatched the napkin before Kevin could react, held it up to the light like it was contaminated. "What is this?" Raphael's voice dripped theatrical contempt. "Are these gears?" He turned to his executives. "The janitor's kid is trying to engineer something." The laughter came on cue. Tired, hollow, but obedient. "Maybe he's designing a better mop," one executive offered. "Or a time machine," another added. "Send himself back to a life that matters." Kevin's jaw tightened, but he stayed silent. His grandfather had taught him that too. Let cruel men perform. They're only advertising their fear. Sarah appeared from the kitchen area, her gray uniform soaked at the sleeves from dishwater. She'd heard everything. Her face carried that familiar expression, the one that made Kevin's chest hurt. The look of a mother who would absorb any humiliation if it meant protecting her son. "Mr. Walcott, I'm so sorry." Her voice came small, apologetic. "He's just drawing. He'll clean up and drawing." Raphael crumpled the napkin slowly, deliberately. Let it fall to the floor between them. "Your son sits in my building, using my napkins, wasting my electricity, and you call it drawing." "It won't happen again, sir." "You're right. It won't." Raphael stepped closer. "Because next time I catch him pretending to be something he's not, you're both gone. Understood?" The executives shifted uncomfortably. One checked his phone. Another studied the floor tiles with sudden fascination. "Understood," Sarah whispered. Raphael held her gaze for 3 more seconds, long enough to ensure she felt the full weight of her powerlessness, then turned and walked out. His entourage followed like shadows. The cafeteria fell silent except for the hum of industrial refrigerators. Kevin picked up the crumpled napkin, smoothed it carefully against the table. The gear ratios were still visible through the wrinkles. That night, in their 1-bedroom apartment 17 blocks away, Sarah made instant ramen while Kevin sat at their tiny kitchen table. The place was small, cramped even, but it was theirs. Subsidized housing that required Sarah to work 60-hour weeks to keep. "I'm sorry," Kevin said quietly. "For what?" Sarah stirred the noodles, her back to him. "Getting you in trouble." She turned, and Kevin saw tears tracking down her face. Not sad tears. Something else. Something that looked like pride fighting with fear. "Baby, you never get me in trouble." She crossed to him, cupped his face in her dishwater-roughened hands. "You hear me? Never." Kevin pulled the crumpled napkin from his pocket. "Mom, I need to tell you something." She sat across from him, exhausted but present. "The vault," Kevin began, choosing words carefully. "Everyone thinks it's locked, but it's not. It's stuck. Stuck. Between eras." Kevin's finger traced the gear sketches. The lightning storm fried its quantum brain, but activated its mechanical heart. It's trying to run on 2 different operating systems at once. One from this year, one from 1970. Sarah studied her son's face. She didn't understand quantum systems or mechanical protocols, but she understood truth. And she'd learned years ago that Kevin possessed something rare, something that had terrified his teachers and fascinated his grandfather. "You can open it," she said. Not a question. Kevin nodded slowly. "Then why?" "Because no one will let me try." His voice cracked slightly. "No one will even listen." Sarah reached across and gripped his hand. "Then we make them listen." 3 floors beneath Walcott Industries, in his executive penthouse apartment, Rafael Walcott stood at the window overlooking the financial district. He hadn't slept properly in 5 weeks. Every time he closed his eyes, He saw projections, red numbers, plummeting stock prices. Board members who'd once called him a visionary now whispered about votes of no confidence. The vault had become more than a problem. It was a countdown timer on his entire existence. His phone buzzed. Another investor pulling out. Another creditor demanding answers. Rafael poured 3 fingers of scotch and stared at his reflection in the window. Somewhere in the building below, that janitor's kid was probably sleeping peacefully, drawing his pathetic little gears, playing pretend engineer. Rafael drained the glass in one swallow. The scotch tasted like failure. At 4:47 a.m., while Sarah finally slept in their apartment's only bedroom, Kevin slipped out of their building. The subway ran sparse at this hour. He rode it back to the financial district, his notebook pressed against his chest. Security at Walcott Industries changed shifts at 5 a.m. He'd memorized their rotation weeks ago. The building's side entrance recognized his mother's access card. He'd borrowed it while she showered. Kevin moved through empty corridors like a ghost, past the executive suites, past the darkened conference rooms, down to the 28th floor where the vault waited. The security corridor was dimly lit, emergency lighting casting everything in blue. Kevin approached the titanium door, pressed his palm against its surface, and then he heard it. Not the countdown click. Something new. Something that made his blood run cold. A voice. Not human, not digital, mechanical, ancient. The vault was speaking. The vault's voice wasn't words. It was rhythm, temperature, memory encoded in metal. Kevin pressed his ear against the titanium surface, his notebook open on the floor beside him. The blue emergency lighting cast everything in an underwater glow. His pencil moved frantically, translating what he heard into sketches and symbols. Tick, tick, pause, click. But underneath that, something else. Thermal stutters. Microscopic expansions and contractions as components heated and cooled in irregular cycles. The vault was running a diagnostic loop, a 1970s fail-safe protocol trying to verify systems that no longer existed. It was calling for help in a language everyone had forgotten. Kevin's pencil captured the thermal signature patterns, drew the stress points where old steel met new alloys. His grandfather's lessons flowed through his hands. Every safe has a pulse. Every lock has a heartbeat. Listen long enough, and they'll tell you their secrets. What the hell are you doing? Kevin's head snapped up. Rafael Walcott stood 15 feet away, his suit disheveled from another sleepless night. Behind him, the early morning shift was arriving, executives with coffee and briefcases, facility managers preparing for another day of crisis management. All of them stopped. All of them stared. I asked you a question, boy. Rafael's voice carried that particular edge of a man whose world was crumbling and had finally found something to break. What are you doing at my vault? Kevin stood slowly, his notebook still on the floor. Listening. Listening. Rafael's laugh came sharp, manic. Did everyone hear that? The dishwasher's kid thinks he's doing something NASA couldn't do. More people gathered. A cluster of engineers, administrative staff, security personnel, the kind of crowd that forms when they sense blood in the water. Mr. Walcott, I can explain. Kevin started. Explain what? How you broke into this building at 5 a.m. How you used stolen credentials. Rafael's face flushed red. Or maybe you want to explain how a teenager who probably failed high school algebra thinks he can crack a vault that stumped MIT. I didn't fail. What's this? Rafael snatched the notebook from the floor before Kevin could react, flipped through pages of sketches, calculations, gear ratios, and thermal maps. His eyes widened, not with understanding, but with rage. You've been documenting my vault, drawing my proprietary technology? Those are just what? Industrial espionage. Raphael's voice rose to a shout. Is that what your mother taught you? Come in at night, steal company secrets, sell them to competitors. Sir, that's not... One of the security managers stepped forward. Shut up, Morrison. Rafael turned back to Kevin, the notebook clutched in his white-knuckled fist. You want to play engineer? You want to pretend you're something you're not? He grabbed the first page. Rip. The sound echoed through the marble corridor like a gunshot. Kevin's face went pale. That page held 3 days of calculations. Thermal expansion coefficients, spring tension ratios, the mathematical poetry of mechanical systems. Rip. Another page. The sketch of the vault's internal mainspring assembly. Gone. Mr. Walcott, please. Kevin's voice cracked. Rip, rip, rip. Rafael tore through the notebook with methodical cruelty. 50 pages of work, weeks of observation and mathematical intuition. Shredded and scattered across polished marble like confetti. The crowd watched in silence. Some faces showed discomfort. Others showed satisfaction, the particular pleasure people take in watching the weak be crushed. Stop! Sarah Ward burst through the service entrance, still wearing her cleaning gloves. She must have realized Kevin was gone, must have checked his room and panicked. Her face was streaked with tears, her breathing ragged from running. Rafael, please, he's just a boy. He's a thief. Rafael dropped the notebook's shredded remains at Kevin's feet. And you're fired! Both of you! Out of this building in 10 minutes, or I'm calling the police. Sarah collapsed against the wall, her hand pressed to her mouth. Not crying anymore. The sound she made was worse. The sound of a mother watching her entire life disintegrate. Kevin stood perfectly still. He didn't cry, didn't shout, didn't even bend to pick up the torn pages. Instead, he looked Rafael Walcott directly in the eyes. You're going to regret this, Kevin said quietly. Rafael blinked, momentarily stunned by the boy's composure. Then his face twisted with fresh rage. Is that a threat? No, sir. Kevin's voice remained steady. It's a fact. The vault is in cascading thermal failure. You have maybe 36 hours before the internal components weld themselves shut. When that happens, even cutting through the titanium won't save what's inside. The nanochips will be fused slag. The corridor fell silent. Get out! Rafael's words came through clenched teeth. Kevin helped his mother to her feet. Together, they walked toward the exit, stepping over the scattered remains of his notebook. Sarah's shoulders shook with silent sobs. Kevin's face remained expressionless. But Cameron Morrison, Walcott Industries' chief of security, watched the whole scene with the trained observation of a man who'd spent 20 years reading people. He'd noticed how the boy had listened to the vault, how his sketches showed understanding that the MIT team had missed, how his final statement about cascading thermal failure matched the diagnostic patterns Morrison had seen but couldn't interpret. As Kevin and Sarah disappeared into the elevator, Morrison pulled out his phone, opened the building's security footage from the past 3 hours. He watched Kevin approach the vault at 4:47 a.m., watched him press his ear against the titanium, watched him sketch with focused intensity. Morrison zoomed in on the notebook pages before Rafael destroyed them. His blood ran cold. The kid had mapped the vault's internal geometry. Not from blueprints. Those were classified. From sound alone. The thermal expansion patterns. The spring tension calculations. The 1970s fail-safe protocol that even Heinrich Müller, the vault's architect, had forgotten existed. Morrison watched Rafael's humiliation play out on screen, watched him destroy evidence of something extraordinary. Then he did something he'd never done in 20 years at Walcott Industries. He copied the footage to his personal drive, and he zoomed in on Kevin's sketches, frame by frame, capturing every page before Rafael tore them apart. In the parking garage, Sarah sat in their 15-year-old Honda, her hands gripping the steering wheel so hard her knuckles turned white. I'm so sorry, baby, she whispered. I'm so sorry. Kevin stared out the passenger window at the building where they'd just lost everything. Mom, he said quietly, I didn't need the notebook. She turned to him, confused. Kevin tapped his temple. I memorized everything. Every calculation. Every pattern. Every number. Sarah's breath caught. You. What? Grandpa Caleb taught me. He said real safe rights don't need paper. They carry the locks in their heads. Kevin's eyes remained fixed on the 28th floor. I know how to open that vault. I know exactly how to open it. But we're fired! We can't even get into the building! Kevin finally turned to look at her. His expression carried something she'd never seen before. Not anger, not fear, certainty. They'll let us back in, he said. Because in 36 hours, I'll be the only person on Earth who can save them. In the security control room, Cameron Morrison replayed the footage one more time. The timestamp showed 5:23 a.m. Kevin Ward, standing alone in the corridor, his hand pressed against the vault. And there, barely visible on the enhanced audio spectrum, Morrison had isolated a pattern. The vault's thermal stutters that Kevin had been mapping corresponded exactly to the cascading failure sequence Morrison's own systems had flagged but couldn't interpret. The kid was right. Morrison reached for his phone, then hesitated. Calling Rafael now would mean admitting he doubted the CEO. Mean risking his own position. But if the kid was right about the 36-hour timeline, Morrison opened a new file on his secure drive. Labeled it Kevin Ward, Vault Analysis, and began documenting everything the security cameras had captured. Because when Walcott Industries collapsed, someone would need to know the truth. 28 hours after Rafael fired them, Sarah Ward received a phone call that made her hands shake. Mrs. Ward, this is Cameron Morrison, Chief of Security at Walcott Industries. We need you to come in, both of you, now. She'd hung up and stared at Kevin, who was sketching gear ratios on the back of an envelope at their kitchen table. They're calling an emergency board meeting, Kevin said without looking up. The thermal cascade is accelerating. How do you? Because I told them it would. The executive boardroom occupied the entire 35th floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the financial district. A table of polished black granite stretched 30 feet, surrounded by leather chairs worth more than Sarah's annual salary. 18 board members sat in those chairs. Lawyers flanked the walls. Financial advisors clutched tablets displaying catastrophic projections. The air tasted like expensive cologne and desperation. Rafael Walcott stood at the head of the table, his suit immaculate, but his face hollowed by sleepless nights. Behind him, a massive display screen showed the vault's status in brutal red text. Critical failure imminent. 8 hours remaining. Ladies and gentlemen, Rafael began, his voice carrying the forced composure of a captain on a sinking ship. I won't sugarcoat this. If we cannot access the vault by midnight tonight, Walcott Industries ceases to exist. The room remained silent. This wasn't news. It was a eulogy. Our creditors have filed preliminary liquidation notices. Our stock has been suspended from trading. The SEC is launching an investigation. Raphael's hands gripped the table edge. The technology inside that vault represents our only collateral. Without it, he didn't finish. The display screen finished for him, showing debt tallies that climbed into billions. The vault is dead, Raphael continued, his voice breaking slightly. Our engineers confirmed that the internal systems have suffered complete... It's not dead, the voice came from the back of the room, barely a whisper. But in the suffocating silence, it carried like a gunshot. Every head turned. Kevin Ward stood near the boardroom entrance, still wearing his blue Mosler jumpsuit. Sarah stood beside him, her cleaning uniform replaced by the only dress she owned, purchased for Kevin's grandfather's funeral years ago. Morrison had positioned them there deliberately, far from the table, far from the power, but visible. Raphael's face cycled through confusion, recognition, then volcanic rage. What is he doing here? Raphael's voice shook. Morrison, I told you to... Sir, you need to hear this, Morrison said quietly. I don't need to hear anything from a kid I fired for. It's not dead. Kevin's voice grew stronger. The vault, It's in fallback mode. The board members exchanged glances. One leaned toward another and whispered. A lawyer checked his phone like it might contain an explanation for this absurdity. Raphael's laugh came brittle, manic. Did everyone hear that? The janitor's kid is giving us technical analysis. Kevin! Please, Sarah whispered, gripping his arm. Let's just go. But Kevin stepped forward. Not far. Just enough to be seen clearly. His dark eyes locked on the display screen showing the vault's diagnostics. Your engineers are reading it wrong, Kevin said. Those thermal signatures aren't failure. They're a 1970s mechanical failsafe trying to handshake with quantum encryption. The vault reverted to legacy protocol when the lightning storm... Are you correcting me, boy? Raphael's roar echoed off glass walls. He strode around the table, his finger jabbing toward Kevin. In front of my board, in my company. Raphael, maybe we should... One board member stood. Should what, Martin? Listen to a teenager whose mother scrubs our toilets. Raphael spun on Sarah. This is what you raised? A disrespectful little punk who thinks he can waltz into executive meetings and... I'm sorry. Sarah's voice cracked. Mr. Walcott, I'm so sorry. We shouldn't have come. Tears streamed down her face. Not quiet tears this time, racking sobs that made her shoulders shake. The kind of crying that comes from watching your child humiliated because you failed to protect them. Because poverty meant powerlessness. Because the world had taught her that people like them didn't get to speak truth to power. Please, she begged. Please, we'll leave. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Kevin's jaw tightened, but he didn't break eye contact with Raphael. The vault's core temperature has increased 0.3 degrees every 6 hours. The thermal expansion is causing the internal components to... Get out! Raphael's face turned purple. Spittle flew from his lips. Security! Remove these people before I have them arrested for trespassing. But no security came, because Cameron Morrison stood frozen, his tablet illuminated in his hands. On the screen, Kevin's sketches, reconstructed from security footage. Beside them, the vault's diagnostic readouts from the past 48 hours. The patterns matched. Not approximately, exactly. The thermal expansion coefficients Kevin had calculated by ear matched the sensor data to 3 decimal places. The spring tension ratios he'd sketched corresponded to stress measurements that Morrison's team had flagged but couldn't interpret. A 16-year-old kid listening through titanium had mapped internal geometry that a $1 million diagnostic suite had missed. Mr. Walcott, Morrison's voice cut through Raphael's rage. Sir, I need to show you something. Not now, Morrison. Sir. Morrison's tone hardened. He crossed to the display screen, connected his tablet. The vault diagnostics disappeared, replaced by Kevin's sketches overlaid with sensor data. This is what Kevin Ward documented 3 days ago. And this, he swiped to the next screen, is what our thermal imaging system recorded this morning. The room fell silent. The patterns were identical, down to the microscopic stress fractures, down to the thermal stutters that Kevin had drawn as small circles with radiating lines. He mapped this by sound, Morrison continued. No blueprints, no classified access, just... He turned to look at Kevin. Just listening. Raphael stared at the screen. His face went from red to white. The boy might actually be right, Morrison said quietly. Jennifer Park, the board's chairwoman, stood slowly. She'd been silent until now, watching everything with the calculating gaze of someone who'd built her fortune by knowing when to cut losses. Mr. Walcott, she said, her voice carrying surgical precision. I'm calling for an immediate recess. You, me, and Morrison. Private conference room. Now. Jennifer, this is... Now, Raphael. The boardroom erupted into whispers. Executives pulled out phones. Lawyers huddled in corners. The carefully maintained veneer of corporate control shattered like glass. Kevin and Sarah remained by the entrance, forgotten in the chaos. Sarah gripped Kevin's hand, her tears still flowing. Baby, what just happened? Kevin watched Raphael being escorted toward the conference room by Jennifer Park and Cameron Morrison. Watched the CEO who destroyed his notebook, fired his mother, and called him stupid. Realized that his empire now depended on the boy he'd humiliated. "Mom," Kevin whispered, his voice carrying something that sounded like his grandfather's quiet certainty. "They're going to ask me to open it." The private conference room felt like a pressure cooker. Jennifer Park had spread Morrison's evidence across the table. Kevin's sketches, sensor data, thermal projections, while Rafael Walcott paced like a caged animal. "This is insane," Rafael muttered for the 7th time. "We're talking about trusting a child with $500 million? We're talking about trusting the only person who's been right," Jennifer replied coldly. "Your MIT team was wrong. Your NSA cryptographer was wrong. The Swiss architect was wrong. This boy—" "Don't call him a boy like he's some kind of prodigy. He's a janitor's kid who got lucky with some sketches." Morrison kept his voice level. "Sir, with respect, luck doesn't calculate thermal expansion coefficients to 3 decimal places." The argument had raged for 30 minutes. Lawyers raised liability concerns. Board members demanded guarantees Kevin couldn't possibly give. Financial advisors ran probability scenarios that all ended in bankruptcy. But the clock kept ticking. 6 hours remaining. Finally, Jennifer Park stood. "Gentlemen, we're out of options and out of time. I'm calling an all-hands meeting. Every employee, every department. We put this to Raphael." Raphael's face went pale. "You can't be serious." "You're the CEO. So make a decision that looks like leadership." Her eyes were ice. "Or I'll call the vote to remove you right now." At 10:47 p.m., Walcott Industries' main atrium filled with 300 employees. Engineers, programmers, administrative staff, facility workers, everyone from the boardroom to the mailroom. They clustered around the massive vault door, backlit by emergency lighting that made everything feel like a movie set. Word had spread through the building like wildfire. The janitor's kid, the torn notebook, the impossible claim. Someone mounted cameras on tripods. The company's media team, perhaps sensing history, began a live stream. Within minutes, the view count climbed. Hundreds, thousands. Industry insiders and curious observers from across the globe tuning in to watch a company's desperate final gamble. Kevin and Sarah stood off to the side, his blue Mosler jumpsuit stark against her funeral dress. His hands were steady. Hers trembled. Rafael Walcott emerged from the executive elevator, flanked by the board. He looked like a man walking to his own execution. The crowd parted as he approached the vault. Morrison had rigged portable speakers throughout the atrium. When Rafael spoke, his voice carried to every corner. "We are 6 hours from bankruptcy." Rafael's words came clipped, bitter. "The technology in this vault represents our only salvation. Our experts, the best in the world, have failed to access it." He turned slowly, his eyes finding Kevin in the crowd. "But apparently, we have one more option." Raphael's tone dripped with venom disguised as hope. A 16-year-old who listens to metal and draws pictures. Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. "So here's what I propose." Raphael's voice grew louder, feeding off his audience. "Kevin Ward, if that vault opens, I'll personally write you a check for $500 million. The atrium went dead silent. Then chaos. Executives gasped. Employees pulled out phones, recording from every angle. The live stream viewer count exploded. 10,000, 50,000, climbing by the second. "Raphael, you can't," Jennifer Park started. "I can and I will." Raphael's pride had snapped. Pressure and desperation and humiliation had fused into something reckless. "But there's a catch, kid. You get 90 seconds. That's it. 90 seconds to prove you're anything more than a lucky fraud." Sarah pushed through the crowd. "No, absolutely not. Kevin, we're leaving." "Mom, baby, this is insane. You don't have to prove anything to these people." She gripped his shoulders, tears already forming. We'll figure something out. We always do. Kevin looked past her at the vault. Its titanium surface glowed under camera lights. He could hear it from here, that irregular rhythm that had haunted him for weeks. Tick-tick, pause, click. It wasn't counting down anymore. It was calling out. How much time? Someone in the crowd called. Morrison checked his tablet. 5 hours, 43 minutes until critical thermal fusion. Then we're doing this now, Rafael declared. He gestured towards the vault. 90 seconds, Kevin. Show us this genius everyone keeps talking about. The cameras focused. The live stream viewer count hit 200,000 and kept climbing. Employees pressed closer, phones raised. Someone started the countdown timer on the main display screen, ready to activate. Kevin turned to his mother. Her face was streaked with tears, her eyes begging him not to do this. Not to risk public failure in front of the world. Not to give these people another chance to humiliate him. He thought about his grandfather, Caleb. About those summers spent in the old man's workshop, learning to listen to things no one else could hear. About the day Caleb had placed a weathered hand on his shoulder and said, "Boy, you've got the gift. Don't let anyone tell you different. Don't let anyone make you small." Kevin gently removed his mother's hands from his shoulders. "Grandpa Caleb taught me this," he whispered. "Trust me, please." Sarah's sob caught in her throat. She nodded, unable to speak. Kevin turned toward the vault. The crowd parted. 300 people and 250,000 live stream viewers held their breath. Rafael Walcott stood to the side, his arms crossed, his face a mask of contempt and barely concealed terror. Morrison's voice cut through the silence. "On your mark, Kevin." Kevin approached the vault slowly. Each step echoed in the cavernous atrium. The titanium door loomed before him, 10 feet tall, weighing 8 tons, protecting technology worth more than small nations. He placed his palm against its surface, felt the vibrations, the thermal stutters, the mechanical heartbeat of a system caught between 2 eras. The main display screen flickered to life. 90? Kevin closed his eyes. Jennifer Park's voice, barely a whisper. "Start the clock!" The numbers began to fall. 89, 59, 89, 58, 89, 57. Kevin Ward, 16 years old, wearing a borrowed maintenance jumpsuit, stood alone before a vault that had defeated the world's greatest minds. And in the suffocating silence of Walcott Industries' main atrium, he began to speak. "This is a Mosler HSX-7, manufactured 2019. His voice carried steady and clear. "But its soul is from 1970. The countdown continued, and the world watched. 89 to 52. Kevin's fingers traced the vault door like a musician finding the strings of an instrument. Not pushing, not forcing, just listening. "The lightning storm didn't destroy the quantum system," he began, his voice carrying across the silent atrium. "It traumatized it, sent it into shock. The vault's AI thought it was dying, so it did what any dying thing does. It retreated to the last place it felt safe." 8941. His palm pressed flat against the titanium. The mechanical failsafe from the original 1970 Mosler prototype. That's what's running now, not the biometrics. Not the quantum encryption, pure mechanical memory. Cameron Morrison stared at his tablet, watching thermal sensors confirm Kevin's words in real time. The crowd pressed closer. The live stream viewer count hit 500,000. 8929. "This particular vault was installed April 2019, Kevin continued, "but its mechanical core carries DNA from Mosler's founder, Hermann Mosler, German immigrant, born 1871, started the company 1902. Raphael's face went from contempt to confusion. "How could you possibly?" "Because safes remember their makers." Kevin's eyes remained closed, and this one is screaming his name. 8915. Kevin's fingers found the combination dial. The crowd collectively held its breath. Standard Mosler protocol uses founder's birth year as the psychological anchor, 1871. But this vault is stuck between eras, so it's asking for verification in both languages, quantum and mechanical. His hand moved with surgical precision. 18, first number. The company's founding year, 1902. Subtract the century, there were two. 89 tone. The live stream chat exploded. Engineers typing frantically. Mathematicians trying to follow the logic. 500,000 people watching a teenager narrate the internal consciousness of a machine. Now it gets complicated. Kevin's voice remained steady, despite the countdown screaming in red. The vault experienced thermal trauma at exactly 9:47 p.m. during the lightning storm. That timestamp is burned into its mechanical memory. 88:47. His fingers turned the dial left. 47. The minute it thought it died. A soft click echoed through the atrium. Barely audible, but Kevin heard it. Morrison's sensors detected the internal tumbler falling. 100 engineers who'd failed for 6 weeks stared in disbelief. 88:33. The nanochips inside are coded Project Phoenix. Kevin's hand moved again. Because they rise from quantum destruction. Phoenix. Rebirth. The vault knows what it's protecting. 71. The atomic number of lutetium. Used in the nanochip substrate. Another click. Deeper this time. More tumblers falling. Sarah gripped Jennifer Park's arm. Unable to watch. Unable to look away. Tears streamed down her face. 88-19. Last sequence. Kevin's breathing remained controlled. The vault needs to know I'm not a thief. That I understand its pain. So I tell it the truth. His fingers moved with the confidence of someone who'd memorized a symphony. Rafael Walcott's birthday, November 3rd, 1978. The man who installed you. The man who needs you. 11-3-78. 8807. The combination dial spun through the numbers. Kevin's hands moved faster now, each rotation precise, mathematical, beautiful. But here's what nobody understood. Kevin's voice rose. You have to enter it backwards. Because the vault is remembering from the moment of trauma. It's moving through time in reverse, trying to get back to the moment before it broke. 87-51. He reversed the sequence. 78-03-11. The atrium fell into absolute silence. 300 people, 600,000 live stream viewers. Not a breath, not a sound. 87-40, 87-39, 87-38. Kevin placed both palms flat against the vault door. I know you're scared, he whispered, but it's time to wake up. 87-35. He gripped the wheel, began to turn. The crowd surged forward, phones raised higher. The live stream camera zoomed in on Kevin's hands as they rotated the massive locking mechanism. 87-30. Resistance. The wheel fought him. 8 tons of traumatized steel refusing to surrender. Come on, Kevin whispered. Trust me. 87-25. Sarah's sob cut through the silence. Please, God. 87-20. Kevin threw his full weight into the turn. The wheel moved. Grudgingly, an inch, another inch. 87-15. Morrison's sensors went haywire. Temperature spikes. Pressure releases. Internal mechanisms that hadn't moved in 6 weeks suddenly coming alive. 87-10. It's working. Morrison breathed. My God, it's actually working. 87-08. 87-07-76. Kevin pulled the wheel, hard. The locking bolts began to retract, massive steel pins sliding out of their chambers with sounds like thunder. 87-04-7-03-7. Rafael Walcott's face drained of color. 87-01. The vault door swung open. Boom. The sound echoed like a cannon shot. The 8-ton door moved on its hinges. Smooth, perfect, impossible. Emergency lighting spilled from inside the vault, illuminating stacks of gold bars, bound cash, and in the center, the nanochips, pristine, undamaged, glowing softly in their protective cases. $500 million of technology and currency revealed in a cascade of reflected light. 87. The final second on the countdown clock froze. Then chaos. The atrium erupted. Employees screamed. Engineers collapsed in disbelief. Someone started crying. Someone else started laughing. The manic laughter of people who just witnessed the impossible. Sarah Ward's legs gave out. She crumpled to the marble floor, hands covering her face, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. Jennifer Park knelt beside her, gripping her shoulders. "He did it!" Sarah gasped between sobs. "Oh, God! He did it!" The crowd surged toward Kevin. Facility workers lifted him on their shoulders. Engineers who'd mocked him now cheered his name. Programmers chanted. Administrative staff wept openly. The live stream viewer count hit 2 million and climbed exponentially. Comments flooded in 17 languages. News alerts pinged across phones worldwide. Teen genius cracks 500-meter vault in 87 seconds. The headline wrote itself in real time. Cameron Morrison stood frozen, staring at his sensors that confirmed what his eyes couldn't believe. Every calculation Kevin had made, the thermal patterns, the psychological combinations, the reverse sequencing, all of it perfect. The crowd paraded Kevin around the atrium, chanting, celebrating, recording every second. Cell phone videos uploaded instantly, going viral across platforms. Vault Boy started trending globally within minutes. But in the chaos, one man stood perfectly still. Rafael Walcott. His face had gone from red to white to a sickly gray. His hands trembled at his sides. His mouth opened and closed silently, like a fish drowning in air. Because in the euphoria of the vault opening, in the celebration of salvation, in the worldwide viral explosion, Rafael Walcott had just remembered exactly what he'd promised. $500 million. In front of 300 witnesses. On camera. Live streamed to 2 million viewers and climbing. His company was saved, but he was ruined. The celebration lasted exactly 4 minutes before Rafael's survival instinct kicked in. Wait! Wait! His voice cut through the chaos. Everyone calm down. Let's not get carried away here. The crowd quieted, though Kevin remained lifted on shoulders. His blue Mosler jumpsuit now rumpled from embraces and backslaps. Raphael forced a laugh. The sound of a man trying to rewrite history in real time. Obviously, I was speaking hyperbolically. The 500 million was... It was a figure of speech. Motivational. Everyone knows that. I recorded it. Cameron Morrison's voice came flat, dangerous. He held up his phone, hit play. Raphael's voice boomed from the speaker. I'll personally write you a check for $500 million. The atrium went silent again, but this silence felt different. Predatory. Cameron. You're taking that out of context. 2 million people heard you say it. Morrison gestured toward the live stream camera, still broadcasting. It's been clipped and shared 50,000 times in the last 4 minutes. There is no context. There's just what you promised. Raphael's face cycled through panic. The board will never approve. The board doesn't need to approve your personal promise. Jennifer Park's voice came cold as winter. She stepped forward, her heels clicking against marble. You said, I'll personally write you a check. Not the company. You. Jennifer, be reasonable. You want to talk about reasonable? Her voice rose. You humiliated this boy. You destroyed his notebook. You fired him and his mother. You called him stupid, worthless, a thief, all while he was the only person in this building who understood what was happening. The employees began to murmur, agreement rippling through the crowd like electricity. You spent 6 weeks and $12 million on experts, Jennifer continued. Kevin Ward solved it in 87 seconds using nothing but his ears and his mind. And now you want to renege? I'm not reneging. I'm being practical. You're being a coward. The words came from David Morrison, the CFO who'd warned of bankruptcy hours earlier. He stepped out of the crowd, his face flushed. We're saved because of that kid, and you want to weasel out of paying him. The crowd's murmur grew louder, angry. Rafael looked around wildly, searching for allies. Found none. The vault is open, someone called. We're solvent again. Pay the boy! Yeah! The chant started small but built quickly. Pay the boy! Pay the boy! Rafael backed toward the elevator, his empire revolting before his eyes. Jennifer Park raised her hand. Silence fell. The board will convene in 1 hour. Kevin Ward and his mother will be present. We have decisions to make. The next 72 hours moved like a fever dream. The board meeting lasted 6 hours. When it ended, Sarah Ward, who'd scrubbed toilets 12 hours ago, walked out as Walcott Industries' Executive Director of Facilities Management. Salary, $340,000 annually, full benefits, company car, stock options. She'd collapsed into Jennifer Park's arms, unable to speak. Kevin's package came separately. Full scholarships to MIT, Stanford, and Caltech, all three competing for him. The company pledged $50 million to establish the Caleb Ward Center for Mechanical Innovation at the University of Kevin's choice. Lab naming rights, research funding, corporate partnership guarantees. We're not letting you go, Jennifer had told him privately. You're our future. But the real explosion happened outside the building. News vans surrounded Walcott Industries within hours. CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, tech journalists, human interest reporters, camera crews from 17 countries. The footage of Kevin opening the vault went supernova. 50 million views, 100 million, 500 million. It played on morning shows, news broadcasts, viral compilation channels. Vault Boy trended globally for 3 days straight. But darker hashtags followed. Rafael Walcott is trash, jerk janitor's son. Pay the genius. Someone unearthed the hallway footage. Rafael ripping Kevin's notebook. The audio of his insults, too stupid to understand a doorknob. Cut into remix videos with Kevin opening the vault. The juxtaposition was devastating. Memes flooded social media. Rafael, get that stupid janitor boy away. Kevin, hold my sketchbook. POV, you called someone stupid and now owe them $500. The vault, scared. Kevin, listening. Rafael, regretting every life choice. Late night host picked it up. Trevor Noah did a 10-minute segment. Stephen Colbert interviewed mechanical engineers about Kevin's technique. Jimmy Fallon did a sketch where he played Rafael, drowning in crumpled notebook pages. Rafael's phone exploded with nightmare calls. Sponsors pulled endorsements. And the tech conference that had named him keynote speaker replaced him with Kevin. His country club membership was temporarily suspended pending review. 3 board positions at other companies politely asked him to resign. Then the investigations began. The SEC wanted to know about insider trading patterns before the vault crisis. Labor lawyers asked about workplace harassment. Employment attorneys contacted Sarah about wrongful termination. Journalists dug into Rafael's history, found other employees he'd humiliated, other people he'd called stupid, other lives he'd damaged. Each revelation went viral. Each interview clip got dissected. Social media became an archaeological dig through Rafael's cruelty. Did you see this? Cameron Morrison showed Jennifer Park his tablet. A video compilation. Every time Rafael Walcott said something he regretted. Runtime, 47 minutes. Jennifer watched in silence. When it ended, she set down the tablet carefully. Call an emergency board meeting, she said quietly. When? Now. At 11:47 p.m., 3 days after Kevin opened the vault, the board assembled in the 35th floor conference room. Rafael wasn't invited. Jennifer Park stood at the head of the table. No preamble, no small talk. I'm calling for a vote of no confidence in Rafael Walcott's leadership, she announced. All in favor? 18 hands rose. Not a single abstention. Motion passes unanimously. Jennifer turned to the company lawyer. Draft the removal documents. I want him out by morning. What about the 500 million? David Morrison asked. Jennifer's face remained expressionless. We'll structure it as a consulting contract. Kevin Ward becomes our chief innovation advisor. The payment spans 10 years with performance incentives, legally binding, fiscally responsible, and it ensures that boy never has to worry about money again. And Rafael. Jennifer looked out the window toward the financial district, where other skyscrapers glittered against the night sky. Rafael made a promise he can't keep and treated people like they were disposable. The market will decide what he's worth now. She turned back to the board. But this company moves forward without him. In a luxury apartment 17 floors below, Rafael Walcott sat in darkness, his phone face down on the table. He'd seen the trending hashtags, watched the memes multiply, felt his reputation dissolve in real time. And in 6 hours, he'd received the call that would end everything. But first, they needed to tell Kevin. The call came at 6 a.m. Rafael Walcott stared at his phone, Jennifer Park's name illuminated on the screen. He'd known this moment was coming, had felt it approaching like a train in a tunnel, distant rumbling growing closer until the impact became inevitable. He answered without speaking. The board has voted unanimously to remove you as CEO, effective immediately. Jennifer's voice came clinical, emotionless. Security will escort you from the building at 9:01 a.m. You have 3 hours. The line went dead. Rafael sat in his luxury apartment, the one he'd be forced to sell within a month, and watched the sun rise over the financial district. Somewhere in those towers, people were reading about his downfall over morning coffee. Laughing at the memes, forwarding the videos, watching his humiliation on loop. His phone buzzed with notifications he couldn't bring himself to read. Stock alert. Walcott Industries, plus 41.7%, following leadership change. Another notification. Your holdings in Walcott Industries, 330. The board had forced him to divest, sold his shares at the lowest point, redistributed them to employees, and Kevin Ward's trust fund. Everything he'd built over 15 years, gone in a keystroke. His lawyer called, then another, then 3 more. Lawsuits were piling up faster than he could count them. Sarah Ward's wrongful termination, Kevin's emotional distress, harassment claims from 17 former employees who'd found courage in numbers. The SEC investigation had teeth now, potential criminal charges. Rafael's empire hadn't just collapsed. It had been excavated, examined, and found rotten at its core. While Rafael packed his office in garbage bags, security had revoked his briefcase privileges, the world was rewriting his story. Kevin Ward's face appeared on magazine covers. Time's most influential teenagers. Forbes 30 under 30. Ted invited him to speak. Universities competed for him with offers that made headlines. But the narrative that resonated deepest was simpler. Genius can come from anywhere. The janitor's son who listened when experts didn't. The overlooked kid who saw what billion-dollar education missed. The story wrote itself in a way that made people believe their own children, their own neighbors, their own overlooked colleagues might be extraordinary too. Walcott Industries transformed under Jennifer Park's leadership. She instituted hidden talent, hiring initiatives, recruiting from community colleges, trade schools, unconventional backgrounds. The company that had valued pedigree over perception now hunted for raw ability in unexpected places. Stock prices soared. Innovation accelerated. The nanochips Kevin had rescued went into production, generating technology that would define the decade. The company entered a golden age built on the rubble of Rafael's cruelty. 3 months after the vault opened, Sarah Ward stood in front of a craftsman-style house in a neighborhood she'd only driven through in her cleaning van. 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a backyard with actual grass, a garage that could fit 2 cars, a kitchen with marble countertops and appliances that didn't require duct tape to function. It's ours. Her voice cracked. Kevin handed her the keys. It's ours. Sarah collapsed on the front steps and cried for 20 minutes. Not sad tears, not stressed tears, The kind of tears that come when you've spent 16 years terrified of eviction notices and shut-off warnings, and suddenly that fear just ends. Kevin sat beside her, his arm around her shoulders, and watched his mother finally breathe. 6 months after his removal, Rafael Walcott sat in a studio apartment in a building that still had the smell of disinfectant from the discount cleaning service. Bankruptcy had taken everything: the penthouse, the cars, the vacation properties, the art collection he'd bought because rich people were supposed to have art. His legal fees alone had consumed what little remained after the lawsuit settled. He'd applied to 12 companies for executive positions, got 3 interviews, 0 offers. His name was poison. His reputation was a cautionary tale taught in business schools. Rafael existed now in the space between relevance and obscurity. Too infamous to disappear, too damaged to rebuild. One evening, as he walked through the financial district where he'd once ruled, he saw Kevin Ward through the glass walls of a coffee shop. Rafael stopped, watched. The boy sat with notebooks and a laptop, sketching something while talking with a young woman who looked equally absorbed in the work. Rafael's feet moved before his brain caught up. He pushed through the door, approached the table. Kevin looked up. His expression didn't change. No anger, no satisfaction. Just recognition. Mr. Walcott. Rafael's voice came hoarse. He hadn't spoken to anyone in days. I just wanted to say. Kevin waited. The vault. You were right. About everything. I know. The simplicity of the response cut deeper than any insult could have. Rafael's hands trembled. I called you stupid. You did. I destroyed your notebook. You did. I could have listened. Could have. Rafael's voice broke. I'm sorry. Kevin studied him for a long moment. Then he spoke quietly. You should have listened, but not to me. Rafael blinked. What? The vault was never the problem, Mr. Walcott. Kevin's eyes held something close to pity. Your problem was that you stopped hearing things that contradicted what you wanted to believe. The vault, me, your employees. We were all telling you the truth. You just couldn't hear it through your own noise. Rafael stood in the coffee shop, surrounded by young innovators and entrepreneurs who probably knew his story and felt something break inside him that had been cracking for months. Kevin returned to his notebook. The conversation was over. Rafael walked out into the evening, disappearing into the crowd of people who didn't recognize him, didn't care about him, didn't remember his name. Exactly as he'd treated Kevin. 1 year later, the lobby of Walcott Industries gleamed with morning light. Employees streamed through doors that now welcomed people from every background imaginable: former janitors, mechanics, community college graduates, self-taught engineers. In the center of the lobby stood a bronze statue, an elderly man with weathered hands, holding a combination lock and a stethoscope. The plaque read, Caleb Ward, Master Safe-Right. Listen long enough, and they'll tell you their secrets. Kevin stood beside it every morning at 7 a.m., coordinating the Hidden Genius Initiative, a program that sent scouts to inner cities, trade schools, and overlooked communities searching for kids with unusual talents. So far, they'd identified 247 young people like him. Sarah worked on the 35th floor now, but she still kept her old gray cleaning uniform in her office. A reminder, a trophy, a middle finger to people who thought her work made her invisible. Jennifer Park ran the company with the same precision she'd used to dismantle Rafael. Under her leadership, Walcott Industries became the most valuable tech company in the world. And somewhere in a studio apartment across the city, Rafael Walcott watched it all on a laptop he'd bought at a pawn shop, understanding too late that the boy he'd called stupid had taught him the most expensive lesson of his life. Genius doesn't ask for permission. It just listens where others refuse to hear. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you believe that genius can come from anywhere, share it. Tag someone who needs to hear that their voice matters. Because somewhere right now, there's a kid like Kevin who just needs someone to listen.